Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another session of Revit Radio. So, for those of you who joined us, you obviously got the notification that this is a week early. It's be our second one technically in May. We're not, we're 2 days from June. I am out of town next week in June. Desiree is surprising me. I don't know where I'm going out of town next week. I just know I'll be out of town because she's surprising me for my birthday. So, bump this forward this week. And then also realized that the next Revit Radio is on July 4th. So I believe we bumped that one too. So pretty sure we'd get zero attendees. Well, no, we get zero American attendees if we did it actually on July 4th. So Melissa said, hey, this week we're better for her. So we bumped this forward a week. And I think we got to figure out, I think we might have already moved to the next Revit Radio. I can't remember. I will get with the coordinator and check that out. But I'm Brian. This is Melissa, depending on which way you have your screen set up. This is Revit Radio. For those of you who have not been here before, we answer questions you guys ask. So if there's no asking from the group here, then we don't have anything to discuss. And I don't have a whole lot of things happening there. So with that said, Melissa is frantically, as the speaker manager, getting ready for her digital built whatever, built the old art, formerly RTC, formerly built, now DBW something. The cool Revit conference here, right? So that's coming up. I'll let Melissa talk a little bit about the conference since she's in last minute for us speakers who are slack asses, not getting their
I
handouts in.
know. I've just been giving Brian a dressing down for not having his stuff ready with all your classes. Yeah.
That is coming up. What are the dates? It's the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, which is like the 12th. What's that?
15th to 17th.
There you go, 15th through the 17th.
So Dallas, if everybody really wants to be in Dallas in June, I guess it's better than Dallas in August.
It's always at hot locations. The venues are a little bit less expensive.
That's fair. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, in just over 2 weeks.
Yeah, just over 2 weeks. I know I have 3 sessions I will be presenting at. I'm co-speaking for 2 of them, although one of them civil chat, which is the civil version of Revit Radio. So I don't know if that's really considered co-speaking because it's this. We're just doing it there. We're going to do it live. So we'll have a live studio audience there as well as the call-in people for civil chat. So if anybody on here knows civil people, get them to log into the civil chat. And then I will also be sitting probably more in the audience than co-presenting with Paul Aubin on the new sample Revit project and the whole history behind it, which was actually interesting. Desiree and I flew down to where did we go? Pittsburgh. We just flew down to Pittsburgh and then drove to the little town where this project here that I actually have on the screen supposedly is taking place. And we got to see the history behind it and everything. It was actually really interesting to know what was going on besides some stupid Revit file that I did. So if you are in built, Paul will be talking about that as well. So with that said, Melissa, did you come up with anything exciting and new that you have found or hated or discovered in the last month, or I should say less than 1 month, 1 week less than a month?
Yeah, mostly just allergies. That's all I've been dealing with and hating this month. When you look outside and it looks like it's snowing, but it's just the cotton.
Yeah, we were driving home the other day and there was this tree. I seriously thought there was this big giant pine tree on fire. I'm not sure what it was. I forget which one it was. Like this big plume of smoke was coming off it. And then I just realized a big gust of wind came up and it was all the pollen. I'm like, oh no, wait, that's yellow, not white. That's just pollen blowing and literally just covered the car as we drove through it. I'm like, glad I don't have these.
I'm feeling like I'm going to use all of my, N95s just to go like get the mail and stuff and go outside because it's so bad.
Yay.
Tom was asking why some of your levels are purple. And
I did see that. So far we only have 2 questions. So if you guys have any questions, you don't want Melissa and I just to ramble on, we need to get you guys to be talking, be putting some questions up here. But Tom did ask, in the new Revit 2024 sample structure project, why are some of my levels purple? I would call that pink more than purple, but sure, it could be the way your screen displays it. I actually have a filter set up for these. So these are the architectural levels, and then these are my structural levels. So for me, if I go into the visibility graphics, and I do this often in the structural side of things, or even in the architectural side of things for the structural links, but I basically start using filters for this stuff. So this particular filter is going to be the ones that says levels. I have levels that are building levels and have levels that are structural levels. So if I really wanted to go change the structural levels to be something else like green, we could add that in here too, so we can have pink and green. That I'm looking at the properties of those levels. So for me as the structural engineer, see, and I forgot to pull this one out wide, so I should have done that earlier, and I would realize I was a slack ass. But what that is in the properties of a level, you do have, is this a building story or is this structural? Honest truth, I really do not know how Revit uses these behind the scenes. I use them quite often for filtering purposes or for scheduling purposes or things like that. So for me, when the architect says, hey, here's my level one, here's my level two, here's my level three, that's cool. But often for me, and this is kind of like rotated weird with those being long. For me, what you can actually see is there's the level that the architect put in there. Then I have my top of steel level. And I know some firms like love this idea. Other firms can't stand this idea. I know Desiree and she hates this idea. She just does the architect's level and puts offsets in. So whatever you're going to do, that's fine. But for me, I like a level in here. So I added this level. So therefore, all the steel can be at that L2 TOS rather than the architect's level. Because especially on something like this beam for me, I don't want to have to take into consideration the thickness of the slab as well as the thickness of the joist to then move this down. I just know I've got a joist in here that's got a 5-inch seat depth. I want to put that 5-inch value in there. I don't have to say, oh, well, it's a 5-inch seat depth on this, and then there's a 5-inch or 6-inch or whatever thick slab, so I need to move this stuff all down. So my floors are always set up to the building story, and then my steel is always set up to then the top of steel. That's how I model it structurally. I sometimes do the same thing in architectural files as well. Especially like start adding people like add like mezzanine levels or parapet levels or things like that. I will go in and start checking that's not a building story. So again, I can start filtering out those like the parapet levels or any other crazy level that the team thinks that they need in there. So for me, that's why there are some magenta, purple, pink, whatever you want to call them, levels, and that's why the other ones are black. And if anybody truly knows why you have building story and structural, I've never actually seen these before or seen how this affects anything else before. But I'm going to add to something on this. This is going to be more for the architects and the structural engineers. The other thing about levels that I see that's often overlooked, and if you guys can't tell, I'm buying time for you guys to submit more questions. So this is me buying time. But when you look at a level, there is a value for a level called computational height. And what that actually means is when we are taking rooms and or spaces and we're calculating the square foot of that room or space, at what height do we do this? Right? Normally, this isn't going to really affect you unless you start getting into canted walls. So if I've got walls that are canting and I go in and start changing this computational height, it will go through and start changing where it's being calculated from. My personal opinion, leaving this at 0 is a horrible idea. And the reason why I say this for architects is if anybody comes in and models like a finished floor or a ceiling as a floor or something that's at that 0 height level, and you have room bounding check for that element, it could really start to screw up all of your rooms. So for the architects or even the MEP engineers in the room, I almost never have my computational height at 0. I go ahead and move it up to like 2 feet or something when I'm looking at that. Because if I do that, then it's going to go ahead and calculate the value at 2 feet, not if I put a finished floor and worry about it there. Again, if you're in an all plumb room building with walls, then this really isn't going to affect anything except for possibly keeping you okay with not screwing up your like floor plan or your room spaces, etc. So if I just come down here and I'm going to go into a floor plan, I'm going to come in here just as an example as I'm still buying time for more questions. And I'm going to throw a section in here. I'm going to go to that view. Oh, actually, I forgot to put a room in there first. I'm going to come in here and place a room. No, I don't need a room tag. Oh, sure, I'll go manage my view template and just turn rooms on in here because I forgot I had these turned off for the linked files. Probably should have went to a working view, but that's okay. I'm going to go turn my rooms on. And I'm going to turn in the X and the color blue. Okay. I'm gonna put my room in here. All right, so these other rooms you're seeing are the rooms from the link file, but I've now got a room in here and I've got this section. The one thing that I'll also point out when you start looking at this is if I come in here and select this room, And I did this one at level 1, block 43 is where it looks at base that room is. So I'm going to change the computational height to 4 feet on this. I'm going to go back and select that room. Do you see this dashed line I get that appears when that room is selected? That dashed line is a virtual representation of that calculation point, right? So if I select it right now, you can see it's about 4 feet above the ground. If I go back and select my level and change that down to 2 feet, go back and reselect my room, you'll see that is now moved down. So that, if you ever select a room and notice there's a dashed line going, what is this? I can't select it. What was that line there? That is the computational height. So if you are in a section or an elevation and you select a room, you can easily see, according to the level you're on, what that computational height is set to as well. So that's kind of one of those big things for me that I always like to point out for the architects and engineers in the room. Change that computational height for the levels from 0 at least to 1 foot or something like that too. Cool. Nick also made a comment back when I was talking about the top of the top of steel levels is if your slab thickness changes and you're like, oh man, I went from a 5-inch thick slab to a 10-inch thick slab. That's a bit highly exaggerated. You can just then move the TOS levels down. Yeah, that is the other reason why I do it. So my slab thickness changes. I don't have to go grab the properties of all of my members and add 6 inches or 4 inches or whatever that value is. I just move the TOS level down with it. So, yep. Thanks for bringing that up, Nick. That's the other reason why I do it. I just forgot to mention it.
Do you ever tie that to a global parameter?
The height of the level or the computational height?
Well, either, I guess.
Height of the level you can't change to add to a global parameter, unfortunately, without using dimensions. You could tie them all in with like dimensions and do like, I have done that before. So like on a typical high rise or something like that, I might do a dimension from one level to the next level. And then in that dimension, I can add a global parameter for like floor to floor height, typical floor to floor height. And then if I change that, then they all move. Sounds really cool. And on sample projects that are pretty small and simple, it works great. On a real project, you do that, then it takes 4 hours because everything's blowing up and you move a level anyway. So personally, I prefer to move the levels one at a time to start seeing, oh, hey, this blew up these few things or whatever it's going to do. So that kind of gets into that. But that was my add in to the levels from whoever originally asked it. I think it was Rick on the.
It was all about color. I like it.
All about color.
One thing I was noticing though, if you pick a level again, and I feel like I looked into this a while ago, but there's under the constraints, there's the story above.
Yep.
Does that go into things that are building story? So if you have level 1 and level 2, but you have like 6 levels in between.
Yeah, so this is true.
Does that only show your building stories?
Correct. Yeah, the story above only shows building stories. So you'll see in here, I'm not seeing any of the ones that say TOS. And then I believe the story above, it's the next logical story above what it tries to take consideration. And I think that has something to do with the I can't remember. I remember I dug deep into this, like, okay, cool. So I have a story above, but what does that mean to me? What is the story above this? And then I can't remember what my solution was when I started digging into it.
Sure. Well, that was my questioning way of answering. That's one thing that Autodesk does with the building story, or that Revit does with it.
True. I didn't say if anybody knows what it does, it affects this. Okay, great. Then what does story above give you? I would love to actually think that would also work. Like if you go back to a floor plan and you're like, cool, I want to go draw a wall, and you go to start drawing a wall. This is something else that also takes into consideration. It's got to be a non-foundation wall. Go height. So one of the things once you start saying height is it doesn't affect these for what level you're going to either, which is what I don't get. So it's like, oh, okay, I could still see all the non-story levels if I really needed to on here. I was kind of hoping it would be like one of those things like, oh, it'd be default to the level above. Because I know like if I'm on level 1, I say go up to level 2, then when I go to level 2, the next default is the level above. I believe I played with that, and the story, non-story, a story above didn't affect any of those. So I don't really know what those properties are there for. I'm sure there is a reason, and I'm sure somebody will tell me, but I honestly don't really know. I use them for filtering.
Yeah, the pop-up thing said something about IFC, which we all definitely use a lot here.
Oh, well, that makes sense. I wonder if that's the case, then it would also use it for, no, because I was gonna say the old analytical models. It might have used it in the exporting out to analytical models for engineers too, but I'm not really sure. Yeah, so there you go. If you're non-American, you might be using that because everybody but America uses IFC.
Right.
So maybe non-Americans could tell me more. Cool. So I see some other questions in there. So what else we got going on there?
Let's see, we'll stick with the structural bit. So Ben's asking, when working with wood projects, is it better to structurally model the architectural walls that we need as shear or bearing walls, or just use their walls and use text to label their walls?
There's actually two ways you can do this. You can model the shear wall. So if you're like, hey, I'm gonna go back here. I think level 1 doesn't have architecture on, except for the rooms. So let me go to, I'm gonna go back to just like my level 2, which should have the architectural stuff turned on. So one of the things when you come in here and you start looking at those links or something through the architectural file, let me find an actual wall. If you wanted to get this coming in here and you wanted to model the architect's walls, one thing that you can do is you can model right over the top, like you said, so you can label and tag them the way you want. This is another thing, and it depends on the size of the project that you can do. But you'll notice that if I tab select and get the architectural wall, what I can actually do is come in here and start creating parts. So I can take that architectural wall and generate parts for it. So now I have every single layer of that architectural wall put inside of here. So if you're like this wall shear, that wall shear, that wall shear, and I'm just going to go ahead and isolate these real quick, but not the architectural file. Come on, I said go away. I have been having so many issues with Zoom. Anybody else lately been having issues with, oh, I tried moving it, that would be why. But I've been having a lot of issues with my Revit running slow once I start Zoom.
Absolutely.
It's been like the last 3 or 4 months that it's just like, come on, I don't really know what's going on here. But let me turn this off. I'm going to my sunglasses and isolate this real quick. Yeah, Simon says all the time, is my monitor 4K? Not my secondary monitor probably is, but I don't think my primary one is. But so you can see I've now generated parts from the architectural wall. And the cool part about this is, and I grabbed one that had a door in it. So you'll see that even though I grabbed this part, it automatically picked on the opening from that architect's where the architect had the door. It didn't put the door in for me. It didn't put my opening in there if you want the opening family, but it did go ahead and break this down as a single wall. And if the architect moves their door, of course, it'll move the opening. If they delete the door and put a new one in, you're screwed. Then all of a sudden, actually, no, as a part, it would still pick up on that. So that's the other nice thing about partiness. But if you really just wanted to start showing like the stud layer, or you want to show this layer, notice that once I've done this, this is all in the properties and picked up, said, hey, this originally came from a wall. Its family was a basic wall, and it came from this original wall type. And it's even got the material by others. It's got a metal stud layer, and it knows that this was the core construction, right? All of the properties of the wall stuff still comes across here and starts looking at this, right? So if you're like, man, I wanted to pull their stuff out, but I only need to see the core, then what you can also do is go into a filter, and I'm going to go filter out parts. I'm going to go say create a new filter. Parts, non-core. And you will notice that I did select the part before I went up to the filter. And the only reason why I do that is then when I hit new filter, it automatically selects the category for me. So just an FYI, that's what I always do for filters. Plus, that way I can then see the properties and I'm trying to remember what the heck I'm trying to do for my rules in my filter because I always forget. So, but now you can see it's got parts. So I've got parts selected. I can say parts. And what you can see in here is now you can start seeing all of the original stuff that's inside of here. The original type, the original family, the original category. And I should be able to inside of here see what was the construction, right? So the construction is not equal to, does not equal 4. And I can say, okay, all right? So then in my view, I can go back and add that parts filter, and you can break it down to finish 1, finish 2, all the different things that you're looking for. And now I can turn those off, or, I'm just gonna halftone those just so we can still see what's going on. I'm gonna halftone those. And now you can see I've got my core layer, but not all of the rest of the other parts inside of there, right? I'm going to even go in and maybe not just make those invisible. I'm going to go ahead and change the line weight to a thinner line weight. which did not
So I'm
work.
just gonna ask a question on your filter. Is there a reason you set up your rule to say does not equal?
Because normally for a structural engineer, they're going to want to see the core stuff, not the finishes. And
Right,
when
but
you part an
like I'm
architectural
asking,
wall,
would you
you're going
say
to
it
get all of the
equals
finishes.
core? So instead of doesn't equal finish.
Well, yeah, but it could be finish, it could be
Equals
substrate.
core.
Yeah, I mean, I could have left substrate too, but I don't know. I only do core. This honest truth, when I have those in past Revit prior to 2023, when people are like, I only want to see the core layers of the walls, 23. If you guys did not know that, under your walls, they added the category for non-core layers. So in 23, you can turn off the non-core layers only to see the core, which we've got. But prior to Revit 23, what I would actually start showing people is, hey, let's go ahead and part it. Now you can see just this. That's a pain because you've literally got to select every single wall and part it. But if you do that and you have a view set up only to show the parts, not the original, then you can go through and do it. So for the structural engineers, like, man, I only need 3 or 4 of the architect's walls that are going to be my shear walls. Now you can do this. Now you're only seeing those shear walls now, or excuse me, those parts that you're just determining as shear. You can still come in here and add marks or comments and mark to this. So if you needed to add additional information, you could go ahead and do that as well. Downside to parts is if you part a floor or you part a ceiling or you part a foundation or you part a column, as you part all of those things, everything in Revit that's been parted is a part. So they are all going to have the exact same line weight. So when you start looking at this, I added a filter for this one, but you can see the original filter, it's not there. If I go part to floor, it's going to have the same line weight. It's going to abide by the same rules as we have for all of the other parts. So if you're really, really, really getting into parts, you've got to go start creating a crap ton of filters for all the different options for a part to change the line weights to turn the visibility on or off individually when you go through. The other fun part is now that I've parted this and it would still understand this, I can actually get rid of the material by original. So if you've got your whatever material you want to use, maybe you've got a type of wall that's a wall shear material for shear walls, whatever. I'm going to come in here and say, cool, I'm going to switch it to that material. And now I have this one repeating whatever that material is. So if you have a hatch pattern that's going to show up in that material, you could swap it out to be your material. Again, it gets to be a little bit of pain if you've got like hundreds of these walls, but this is what I tell a lot of my structural engineers to do on like wood multifamily or wood residential. Just part out the architect's walls and be done with it.
So does it basically copy monitor their wall? What's that?
In my mind, it's better than a copy monitor because now I
Yeah.
have the capability to turn things on and off and it still maintains the origin and it just updates. I don't get the stupid thing, oh, coordination monitor alert, blah, 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 blah. It just does it.
That is better.
If I'm working in a project that's going to be precast or tilt up or anything like that, and the architect is modeling concrete, Desiree actually did an entire project like this when parts first came out, probably back in like 2016, where the architect was a small building. She just like selected the architects every single wall and said create parts. They were all concrete. She turned a filter to turn off everything that wasn't part of the core. And then if they went in and moved the door, it all updated it. And there were times where she's like, that's cool. I've now got this part. Let me go back to 3D here. Let's select that part. I'm going to select the parts first and go to my 3D. So she even went in and then started like editing the parts. So you can actually merge and unmerge parts when you start looking at it. So she started doing some of that stuff. I'm going to go to sunglasses and isolate. Oops, that's not sunglasses. It's like previous. Isolate elements. Come up here to say, do part visibility, just show me parts. Right, so she even came in, then all those parts were there. She's like, ooh, I need to grab this part. I need to divide that part because then I needed to put a concrete seam here. So she edited the sketch and she's like, cool, let me put a seam right there and then finish. And then she was able to, nothing will be divided. I broke something there, but she was able to go through and then start playing with all the different parts in the divisions to break it up into the pieces she would need for precast. And again, when the architect moved the door, it all just kind of updated and it worked pretty well. Not a huge project, again, more of a smaller type project. So hopefully that kind of answers the question of wood projects. The other thing that I have done too is I've actually created an adaptive component for one of my clients. Like I don't want to go through any of that headache. That all seems a pain, copy monitor this. I just basically need a tag that says this wall is shear. So we actually created an adaptive component that had like a nested tag into it. So we would click this endpoint of the architect's wall, click this endpoint of the architect's wall, and it was just an adaptive component with symbolic lines on it that would move with it. And so if they moved the wall or whatever, it would go, and then they just had manual values they would type in for what type of shear wall it was. So they weren't actually doing any modeling. They were just adaptive componenting with symbols to go through that architect's file, and boom, there they go. I've seen other people do it with just like a line-based detail component. So they just draw a line next to the wall. It's got values that they can type in. It looks like a tag, and they go through and do that as well. So there's a few different options. I'm personally a fan of, I like to model it. So I would either do parts or truly just go model a wall. So Ben, hopefully that answers the question.
Say I didn't know that if you did parts on that, that it would keep updating. That's kind of awesome.
Yeah, they're actually the parts through links are actually kind of cool. I had one client, I would show you the project, but I can't because it was a government project, which is so stupid. It's a top secret project that you can see off the road, but it was the new air traffic control tower for the Pentagon, which is a fire station / air traffic control tower. But it had all these bumps in and out to the concrete. It was all different thicknesses. It was all going to be cast in place or precast. I can't remember. And so literally the architect themselves just kept doing the parts. Because the other thing about it is you can take the part, you can divide it, but you can also say, show me the shape handles. And so he was dividing parts and like doing shape handles, like, oh, and this one part, it needs to be thicker. And then over here, it needs to be thinner. So he was going through, like, cool, let me do that. And let me divide this part. And let me go edit the sketch. And let me draw a line from here to here. And let me finish that. And now he's got that division, right? So we finished that division. Then you take this one and be like, okay, this one was then, let me show the shape handles on this one. And then this one was thinner. And so literally just with one wall, he did all of this, and he just made sure all of his views were just set to show parts, except for a couple working views when he manipulated the walls. And so that's what he went through and did on the entire project. And then even places where like, oh, there was an opening here and we needed to merge it. He split this part here and then merged these two parts so the concrete would wrap around the studs or the insulation or whatever it was. And his entire building was done with parts. Small project, only 1 or 2 guys working on it. It was beautiful to work with. Large project, large team, yeah, you're going to get somebody who doesn't understand parts and you're going to be host. So.
Trying to think of a more family-friendly way to say I want to play with parts more.
Melissa, do you want to play with my parts, Melissa? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I want to play with my parts. Wow.
Hey, whatever. Once you get done playing with parts, make sure you publish the package so someone else can consume your package.
Someone can consume it. Yeah.
Oh, I love Autodesk and the way they don't think things through. And make sure to wash your hands afterward. Nice, Rick. All right, so what other questions do we have?
Well, I feel like that kind of dovetails into Simon asking if you know any undocumented features in Revit that everyone should know. So I feel like, well, maybe they did document it and I didn't look into the parts documentation because you don't want to Google that.
How do I play with my parts? I don't know. Let's Google that one right now.
The best use for your part, yeah. No.
The biggest undocumented feature that I show, and I laugh because I was at a built session, God, I think it was back when it was still RTC and I was giving a presentation. And it'd been a while since I'd been in my data set. And I'm like, crap, wait, what did I dimension here? And so I right-clicked on the padlock, and I do this all the time. And I hit this show related. I'm like, okay, it's dimensioning between grid D and grid C, right? I don't remember what it was. It was in a family or something. And I'm like, okay, close it. I just did that real quick for an explanation. And somebody's like, whoa, hold on, back up. What did you just do? And I showed that. And everybody's like, oh my God, I got like 75 tweets for that little tip. Nothing about my entire session. So this is one to me, as those of you who know me well, when I'm in a boring meeting, I will right click on everything. And in Revit, there's a lot of things like you can right click and get this toggle. Cool. I can toggle it by clicking it. The right click button is stupid on that. But if you right click on this padlock below a dimension, you can say show related. And when you do that, it's going to open up this little dialog. It is a non-stretchable dialog box. I've been yelling at Autodesk for years, but they're like, yeah, nobody uses that tool but you, Brian. I'm pretty sure on the little list of tools being used, I'm the only person who uses this. On the reports they get. but it will then show you the two elements. I mean, it'll tell you up here in the description, and it will highlight those elements down on the screen. At the point in time I did this during that presentation, I had not right-clicked on the equal, I don't think, because if you right-click on an equal, you also get show related, and then it will take you through the whole string. So if you right-click on the padlock, it does this one portion of the dimension string. But if you do it here, it'll go all the way through E to D to C to B1 and it'll just start bouncing around and showing you everything you've dimensioned. Now, this is really, really stupid in this example, because in this example, I'm right on the grid lines. But like here, did I dimension the grid line or the column? You might not know that. What was dimensioned, right? If I take this up here and I go down here and get the column, you might not know. You can tell now because I've stretched it out. But if this is back where I had it, is that the dimension grid line or is that the dimension? So again, right-clicking on that show related will then say, oh, no, you did the W column something, something, something. Again, non-stretchable dialog box and grid 8. So it will start to show you and highlight the things you have dimensioned. And I use this tool not only in projects, but quite often in my family environment. It's like, why isn't this family behaving? Oh, there's two reference planes on top of each other. It's grabbing the reference plane called front, not the reference plane called panel front. And I can just toggle through those and start seeing what's going on. So that to me is an undocumented, I don't know if that's necessarily a feature, but it's definitely one of the undocumented tools that I don't think a lot of people know that you can do. So for me, it's a ton of right-clicking on whatever you do. Another one, and I learned this, God, my kid is now 26, and I think she taught me this when she was 13. So about 13 years ago, I learned this one, that if you have a wall or a grid, I could just done it with a grid line, and you come in here and you grab the little grip, right? I see everybody all the time, they're out here, they need to get that grip, so they zoom way the heck in. And then they go try to move it, but they've also got a pan. So they're doing the claw with their finger, trying to pan and zoom and do all of this with their little finger when they're trying to do that. If you take that grip off the screen and release it, so I'm gonna do this again, grab the grip, drag it up. Oh, it must be pinned. I'm gonna unpin it first. I'm gonna drag this grip up here, and it's dragging. We can see that. If I drag it off the screen, notice how I don't have my finger on the mouse, and yet I can move the mouse and it's still going. So you can then zoom in and out. It's still trying to move that grid. You can pan, you can do whatever you want, and then you click the mouse to adjust where it's going. So if you take any moving grip, walls, grids, levels, anything where it's a line base, you've got a grip to stretch something, and you take that grip, drag it off the screen, release your mouse, you can now release the button, move your mouse all around and drag it. Theoretically, you could also do the same thing by right-clicking on it and saying drag in. So if you right-click on it and say drag in, that will give you the same option.
Handy.
So yeah, I call it the non-claw maneuver there. Couple other things on the right clicks that I always like to do. If you really, really, really want to screw somebody up, you could say maximize the 3D extents on grids and levels. I don't ever recommend doing this because it does go to the 3D extents. So if you have like an AutoCAD file in here that's got, you know, actual state plane coordinate system, you maximize extents, it'll go out the way out to where that AutoCAD's extents are. So do be careful of the maximize extents. But the one I do like often is the reset to 3D extents, right? Because if I come in here and I turn my crop region on, and then I take that crop region and I move it down here, these grids are no longer 3D. These grids are all 2D and they've been adjusted. Well, grab this one. They've been all adjusted for the 2D extents, right? If I turn that crop region off and get rid of the visibility, it can leave it, but it's still 2D. So it is now 2D and it's not reset back to its 3D extents. You can right click on it and say reset to 3D extents and it will go back. Unfortunately, you can only do it one at a time. Oh no, oh yeah, I only had one. I was gonna say, unfortunately, it will only let you do one at a time. So if I have two of them selected, the reset does not come up. But the reset to 3D extents, for whatever reason, I do not understand why Autodesk has in most of the family templates, the levels all 2D and all the different views and half of the reference planes. So it's like they've taken the grips and moved them in half of the view templates or the family templates when you go to create them. So yeah, right click, resetting to 3D extents, really, really nice feature as well. And I'm sure that's documented somewhere, but no, I've never seen that. People talking about that. So those are some of those little things like that that to me make the day-to-day productivity huge when you start going into it. Like the other one that I don't think a lot of people know is you can say open, and in 24, or was this 23.1? I don't remember. And one of the newer versions, you can say, ooh, go open the sheet that's on. So if you're at a view and you want to go see what it looks like on the sheet in the project browser, you can right click and say open sheet. Inversely, we've always been able to go down to the views you're in, or go to the sheet you're in, find the views here, and open the views this way by double clicking them. The open sheet has been something that's kind of new to what's going on to that, and I really love that object when we start doing that. The other huge tool that I use often is I'm going to, this is my 3D view. I'm going to reset this. I'm going to go change my scale just a little bit. The scale doesn't actually matter here, but I'm just going to change it a little bit. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to turn my section box on. I'm also going to go turn off all my links because I don't need to see all the links in this view. I have links. And this is one that I have people do for me quite often. I am going to take this, I'm going to stretch this section box down. Sure, that looks great. I'm going to turn off my scope boxes, which you don't have to do. I'm just trying to clean this up a little bit. All right, so I've cut my file down quite a bit. I'm going to go create a new sheet. Sure, looks good. Probably shouldn't have been an 8.5 by 11 tile block. So I've got my new sheet here. I am then going to take that 3D view that I've just cut down the way I want to, and I'm going to put it on the sheet. I don't care how big it is. I don't really care what the scale is. I'm just going to put this down here. Because I get people often saying, hey, can you help us troubleshoot this stair or help us troubleshoot this thing? And I'm always like, cool, can you just send me that stair? Because I don't want to go download and open up your 1 gig file. I just need to focus on the area you're in. So if you do this and you put that view onto a sheet, you have to put the view onto the sheet. I don't know why. I think this part's stupid. But you can then take that sheet, right click, and say, where is it? That's not the one I wanted.
Save to file.
Save to file. Yeah, where is it? There. Save to new file. So I can come down here and say, cool, go save this to a new file. What it's going to do is see just the elements you have inside of this view turned on. I guess I should have checked do not show. I thought it would only give that to me once. I didn't realize I was going to need it 12 times. What it's going to do is it's going to see the elements that are visible in this view and only export out the elements visible in this view. Now, it's not going to cut these beams. It's not going to cut this floor, but it's only going to give me those beams to the extent. It's not going to give me the columns on the other side of those beams. It's not going to give me, you know, all of the floors above or below, but it is going to give me this entire floor for the length of that building. But this does help me often. Delete me, cut. I'm going to put this in my temp folder. Actually, open the temp folder before I save it there. All right, it even takes it and opens the file, or it opens the file temporarily. I wish it would just keep it open. It's like, that's the reason why I did it. But now if I go open that file, dude, I wonder, is it in your recents? Because it actually technically opened it. No, I just had to check. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the file. I'm gonna go to my folder again. I'm gonna grab me that delete me cut and open it. So quite often I get people like, oh, I just need to look at this part of the building, or I just need to export this part of the building to Rhino or to SketchUp or to whatever reason. Now it comes in here, you'll see there's not a whole lot in here. There's, you know, I got my 3D views and it gives you, this is, it cracks me up. If you do it from the default 3D view, you then end up with 2 default 3D views. But I can come in here, open the 3D view because technically it's in the sheet. See, is it the right 3D view I'm opening? Who knows? We'll rotate this around. Oh, it did give me all the links too. I wasn't expecting that. I don't know if it's done that in the past. Probably should go unload those links, but what you can see is now it did give me, like I said, only that part of the building. So it did give me the entire length of the floor. It did give me the entire beam system, right? But it didn't give me the column on the other end of this beam because I was cutting through the middle of this, right? So it only gave me parts that I was right there looking at. Again, like I said, it's not perfect. It's not going to split your column or your walls, give me the walls all the way up the building. It's not going to split your floors, but it does only give you that stuff you need. So if you're ever in part of a building, hey, I just need to export this. I just need to do this. What can we do there? That's what I always tell people. Put a section box in, I guess it brings links along for the ride. That's new to me. I don't recall it doing that. Maybe it has, and I've just always removed them. I don't remember. But it does just then go in and bring those parts of the building. And I use this especially when I'm trying to work with my clients. I'm like, hey, give me just part of the building I need to see. That, in my mind, is the easiest way to get it to do that. So hopefully that answers the question Rick had for undocumented features. I think it was Rick. No, it was Simon. And both of their icons are purple. I thought it was the same guy. So hopefully that answers the question of a few of the undocumented features that I like to use. So what else we got up there?
Keeping with features, are there any 2024 new features that you've worked with more that are more or less than what you had hoped for?
I haven't done a whole lot in the 2024 yet. I have one client who's using it. I'm still trying to get used to the damn icons. The icons for me, I'm still like, where's that button? I'm staring at the button. That's not what it used to look like. So my brain is not, my muscle memory's there. My mouse and my finger goes there. Well, my brain has to read, is that the right tool? Dumbfounding to me. I haven't played with this a lot. I have been playing a little bit with the topo solids with my one client who's working on it currently, and we've been noticing a lot of issues on the topo solids only because it's just kind of weird. He's trying to do phasing and get the cut and fill, and we keep running into a couple weird nuances. It's still cool. He's still loving it better than the old topo surfaces, but just trying to still get in there. So I haven't used a ton of the new 2024 features yet, so I can't really answer that question. I have noticed in files that I've just been playing with the speed performance, which is always my biggest reason to tell people to upgrade. I have noticed the speed is different. It is faster in 24 than what I'm getting in 23, but I haven't really jumped into any of the 24 stuff to be like, oh yeah, this is the coolest thing ever. There was something I was creating a family the other day and I can't remember what it was. I'm like, oh, this is new to 24. And I liked it, but I don't remember what that was. So sorry, Rick can't really get into the 24 features yet. Trying to get up to speed on some of that stuff and really get into it and start playing a little bit more. And theoretically should be doing more of that this week when I write my build paper, but we'll see.
Yeah, you should. Let's go. Ben has some more questions on parts. So when you use parts, does it update when the architecture moves or changes the wall type?
And the answer to that is absolutely yes. I didn't want to go to the cover sheet.
So even if they change the wall type, it'll.
If they change the wall type, the definition of, yeah, so the parts still understand. Now, as you uncheck certain things, like since I unchecked, I don't remember what floor I did that on.
You can't find your parts.
I think I was on level 2 when I did that. No, go away sheets, come back views, go back to, I think it was level 2 I did that on. But I did it under. Did I do it right here? Oh, I did it under.
Thanks for the courtesy laugh, Ben.
Did I do it on level 2 or level 3? Does anybody remember where I did it? Crap. Show parts. It's got to be this level. Let me go and hide the links. There it is. There's my parts. So when you do the parts, yes, it will update. But since I changed the material of this one, I unchecked the material by original, it will still update. So if they change their wall from a 4-inch stud to a 6-inch stud, my part will then reflect that. And these parts will move depending on how much you've manipulated them. I don't plan on you doing the change the shape handles and move this. I mean, if they move this from like 4-inch stud to 12 inches, and since I showed shape handles on this, I don't know if the back is going to stay stationary to where it was or if they're going to be overlapping now. I can't remember because I don't usually manipulate parts through links that much. Usually for me, I just edit the part, I turn on filter to create the ones that are hidden that I don't want to see, and that's what I do. But yes, they will update. If their wall type changes from a 4-inch to a 6-inch or to an 8-inch, then this part will adjust accordingly. And as long as I haven't done too much to manipulate those, I believe they'll all move and go along for the ride. So yes, that absolutely will happen. You still can tag parts. You've just got to go create tags. So I can go tag a part. You've just got to go create a part tag. And guess what? Out of the box, there isn't a part tag. Oh, I guess I lied. Part tag. There you go. So there is a part tag. So you can still go tag that part and do what you want to get to it. Now, with that said, they have different values that you can start tagging. This is why I said, you might go create shared parameters for your parts or whatever that you might be looking for. Because when you start looking at the parts, you're going to get like original category, original family, some of that stuff. You can even get things like, hey, has this shape been modified? So if you're trying to do a QA part to see what's going on, but you don't get all of the properties you would get like for a wall. Like you don't get, you might get base level. You might, I don't know, let's add it over and see what it gives us. Base level, do you get top level? I don't think there's like a top level like a wall, because again, thinking about this, your parts could be floors, foundations, columns, walls, ceilings, any of the system layered families and system foundations, etc. So there's a lot of the things that you can create parts out of, so you're not going to get all of the properties you might have had in there. So you can start coming in here and doing some of that stuff. I don't even know what layer index is, but cool, let's go load that into the project and find out.
Those exchange, was it exchange identity or?
That's all your IFC stuff that they added to 24.
Okay. I clearly haven't been.
So it's not associated to a level, and whatever the other thing I picked up with the layer index is 1. Is that like layers in Revit, the wall layers? I have no idea. Yeah, that's layer index 2, layer index 3.
So that's your core versus
4.
your finish.
No, there's just 5 layers in this part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh.
So just not the core. That's what I thought at first too, but
King can't 2, 5. So if they took that and changed it to a concrete wall,
I would lose all these other layers because theoretically they don't exist.
Just go back to core. Okay.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. I really am gonna have to go play with parts more.
You gotta add the word "my" in there just because it sounds so much better, Melissa. And then you gotta get like a raised eyebrow when you say, "I'm gonna have to go play with my parts some more."
Gotta go. Play
with my
go. Oh wow. I'm just gonna say I'm on lots of allergy pills right now, everybody. Keep it a little more under control.
This is why I never used to record these, is then I didn't have to worry.
It's true, and then you get me on here with my filter all Benadrylled out. And
yeah, theoretically it all updates. Like I said, Ben, play with it on a project and just kind of see. If it doesn't work, then you delete the parts and you go back and you draw a wall in there. And technically, that's the weird part about this is if you part your own wall out, you still see the original part. But if you come back here and say show original, since the original's in the architect, it goes away. So it's weird when you part through a link because the show original just says, hey, I'm making everything go away, which is really fun to do structural because everybody's like, I can't see my walls. Maybe it's the discipline. Maybe I need to go change it to architectural or coordination. What's going on? Why can't I see my walls? Well, it's because they're not walls, they're parts. So if you left it on show both, then you would see your parts as well as your original wall if it was yours. Or you can say show the original. Again, if it was yours, you'd see your own wall or parts, then comes back to just your parts. So yes, if you're doing this, you've got to let the team know because they go to like their 3D view, they're like, the whole model just disappeared. What's going on? All my stuff's gone. Because if you're parting it from an architect's file, again, in here, you'll see that I don't have those walls floating in that rando space in the middle. Actually, I should somewhere say that they are. Because normally when you would come into here, your parts wouldn't be parts. It would be like show original. Everybody like, where'd all my walls go? What's going on there? So again, it's when you go back and say, hey, show me those parts.
You get to.
What was that?
Go back in here and say, show me your parts.
Show me your
parts. I have to tell them. It's fine. Oh man. I'm also slightly unclear because Ben has the end of that question says, sorry, also you mentioned there were 2 ways you deal with wood. And I'm not sure if it's like piling on by inappropriateness or if that was actually being a recap of how you
Ben's asking how I play with my wood part or just my wood.
How you deal with wood. Yeah. I'm genuinely not sure if that was funny or if that's
I'm having flashbacks to Big Bang Theory when they're playing Catan. I'm gonna erect something with my wood. Sorry. If you've not seen that episode of Big Bang Theory, you need to Google it. So the other thing I was saying is if I was working with like the architect's file, I have seen people, and this is totally not going to be the right object for this, but I'm going to use this one that I have for interiors. Like let's say in here, this is where the architect's wall was and I could see their wall. what you can do, and I'm going to go ahead and load in one of my detail component families. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Wrong thing. See, Kitty Mackie, I got to go to 23 because I haven't uploaded anything yet. Detail items, division 0. So stints. So what I've had some people do is basically create something like this, where it says detail component family. And this detail component family is going to be a line-based family. All right, so it's only going to show up in the view you're in. It's only going to show up in the one view. You could do this with a line-based 3D family if you really wanted to as well, and just put symbolic lines in there so you could tag it in multiple views. I just only have this one currently. That's not what I wanted. So if I go to detail component, it's going to be the one I have in here called paint extents. But then you could just be like, oh, there's the architect's file. I want to draw this from here to here, spacebar to go to the other direction. And this is literally just a 2D detail component family, right? You could then add properties to this detail component family for like prefix, suffix, whatever you're going to want to do, and then you could just tag it. So you're literally just tracing over what the architect did. I went too far. I didn't realize there was a hallway there. Went too far, but you can come in here and it's just this 2D line you're doing, and then you say, hey, this is my shear wall, right? You could have your shear wall tag that you could tag this detail item with. You could have it pre-built into the symbol if you want. I personally recommend tagging it because then that way you can move it around. But you could have that pre-built in, and it's literally just either a 3D with symbolic line family or a 2D family that you just trace over it. Now, this has no relationship. So if the architect moves the wall, lengthens, shortens the wall, this is not going to update with that. Right? I have also created for a client something similar, but it was an adaptive component where we could pick the beginning of that wall, the end of the wall. I also set it up to where that would report the length, and then they used that length value in some sort of engineering calculation that would report back some sort of number they wanted. So it knew the length of the family, which you could do in a detail component 1-2. It knew the length of the family. They used that in some sort of calculation point, or maybe they just scheduled that. I don't remember. And then they tagged that adaptive component. The reason we did that as an adaptive component for them is if the architect moved the wall and you hosted it to the wall, then it would move along and just go along to the right as the wall updated as well. So it's a little bit different than the 2D documentation, which is detail or model component. The adaptive component will literally can be hosted to the architect's wall.
I chuckled there because I was going to ask, can you lock it to your parts?
If it was adaptive, it would automatically be levitating towards my parts, gravitating towards my parts.
Oh man, that was kind of a serious question though. If you had your annotation there, if it would go if you locked it to the part and the part was up. I mean, I don't really know what else they should call that, but man, it's making it difficult to have a totally professional conversation about it.
These are my professional conversations, Melissa. I don't know what you're talking about. No, the whole thing on that is when Autodesk released parts and got it. It was a while ago. It was part of
Wash your hands, Michael.
It was part of their constructioning for Revit, where they're trying to make it for contractors. Oh, look. And their ideal aspect of it was not to use it for something like that. And I still have structural engineers who will use it for something like this. It's like, okay, I'm going to go in and grab my parking level, and I've got this slab, and I want to show construction joints. I should have went to the actual structural view, not the working or the printing, the working view. But so they've got their slab in here, right? So if we come in here and find our slab, you can take that entire slab. This is our slab here, I think. Yep, my floor, and I can edit, or I can make this into parts. So I'm going to come up here and just create this and convert it to parts. And now I've got the floor as a part. Because then you can start coming in and saying, hey, I want to divide the part. And then I'm going to do it by sketches. Or if you wanted to, you could even say, I'm going to do it at intersections. I want to part this out at every single grid level. Check all. Say, okay. And now what I'm going to do here is I have added a construction joint at every single one of those. So let me go back to my 3D view and isolate it. And you're going to see, hey, here's my floor. Oh, I only had one part selected. But now you can start to see I've got all of these. I just did it to grid lines. You can sketch them in wherever you want them to be. I put all of these in there. Now I can see all of these different floor parts for what's going to be in there. The other thing that's fun about this too is if you come down here and do I have to grab the original first? Can't remember where I have to grab this from. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, I think I have to grab the original piece. Okay, I should be able to get it here. I'm going to come back and say show both. So this is my floor. Where is it? Oh, that's right. I got to grab this. I've got to say edit division. And then up here, you can even do a gap. So I wanted this to have a 1 inch. I'm going to do 1 inch gap. I know it's big for construction sequencing and finish, but you'll see even though I only sketched a line, now I've got 1 inch gaps in all of these. So you can go in and have gaps in there, or you can come up here and say, let me go edit that division. I probably have no profiles loaded. Yeah, so I can actually do different division geometry profiles. And so now when I finish that, you'll see that not only is it a gap, but it's also got the whatever profile you put in there. So this is the whole theory with Autodesk. As an architect or somebody could go draw a concrete wall, and then the contractors could go start dividing it into parts and show where those precast divisions are going to be. And if you divide that part, it has properties for gapping, profiles, etc., and what you want to do. So that was their whole theory behind it. So look, I now just showed all my construction joints for every single one of those things. And again, then I could come back, but oh shoot, I screwed up. Let me go edit division. Let me grab the intersects, and I didn't want a specific grid line. Probably should have looked at what grid line we were looking at first. We'll just do this and say, really? I can't select more than one at a time. We'll do the arrow spacebar trick. And now you can see I broke up all those divisions, but this one's still here. And then you can subdivide a division. So if I have that division, I can actually take this one and then edit its division and then edit its sketch. And hey, I wanted to have a concrete joint. Go from this corner over to here, cool, finish. And now I've got that in there, finish, and now I've divided that part. So a lot of different ways to play with that and start getting into it. So yes, that's what originally was there for Autodesk, and that's where we can start taking advantage of it.
Okay, so I'm gonna let that one go.
So yes, go home and play with your parts.
Oh. So we have two that should be pretty quick, and maybe we can save Ben's warehouse question till next time. So Rick was saying, when I send off a model to a client and have used Keynotes, do they need the Keynote file, or is that only for adding additional Keynotes tags?
The only reason the client would need your Keynote file is if they were trying to display your 2Ds. Oh, I like that last comment. Somebody deleted it. Somebody just had a comment come with, oh, look, I came in the right time for the conversation. So when you get into that, the keynoting, if they're trying to open up your file and see the keynotes, then yes, they need the keynote file. If you're just giving it to the structural engineer or the MEP engineer or whatever like that, then no, they don't care about your keynotes. They don't need your keynotes. The keynote value will be there. The number associated to it will be there. They just won't be able to read what that number is. Now, the downside to that is when you get in there and you really start looking at it is if I had keynote 100 and mine said Fred, and your keynote file of 100 said Wilma, and it was pointing to that one, it would switch Fred for Wilma.
Which is, of course, annoying.
So I don't know if that answers your question, Rick, on that. It's like if they're going to manipulate or see your keynotes, then yes, they need the keynote file. If you're just sending it to them and your stuff has keynotes, then it doesn't matter. So hopefully that answers the question. And you'll need to keep sending it to them to make sure they keep getting the latest updated keynote file.
Desktop connector. Sorry. Yeah, dude, don't rely on desktop connector if you're editing your Keynote file a lot, because it doesn't keep up with that and it goes poorly.
And Rick is asking if they want to see the Keynote legend that is on the sheet, they need the file. If they want to see it within Revit, yes. All the elements will still have the Keynote properties associated to it, but then yes, they would still need it.
Okay, and quickly, Tom was asking how often you audit your files.
All the friggin' time.
Is every time I open, because I'm always getting in to fix things. So.
For me, whenever I open up a client's file, I open it with an audit pretty much every single time. If it's my own file, whenever I think about it, which is probably about every third or fourth time I open up the file, I've got to remember to not use the recents, right? We're all in here, we're all working. I got to remember to not open it here. But if I am browsing to the file, if I'm going through docs or open or whatever, absolutely I freaking hit the audit every single time. So that's the way I go through and do it. I audit all the time. The other thing that I do quite often, I don't know if you do this, Melissa, is during my synchronizations on a large project, I don't have a BIM 360 project open, but during my synchronization, I check the compact central file.
Yeah, do that too.
So those two things, the audit will take you longer to open the file. The compact will take it longer to synchronize as well. But I always tell people, like, if your role as a model manager in the office, you should always do both of those things. If you're the BIM manager, you absolutely should. But that's just kind of how I word it. The other thing is, if it's a BIM 360 project, I tell all my clients that you should have somebody publish every single day, because why not? It takes you 30 seconds. So if you're the person publishing, you might as well open with an audit, because you're already browsing to the file anyway.
It's true. Have you ever actually seen it take longer? It always gives you the pop-up that it'll take longer, but the only time I've actually seen it take much longer was when there was a problem with the file.
It's hard for me to say, because usually it's a BIM 360 project of the clients I haven't opened in a long time, but it does take a little bit more time. Yes, they say significant. I don't think it's significant, but it does take longer.
Sarah's wondering how the audit works when there's others in the model.
So the audit goes through, and it's just like anything else. It's auditing every single thing, and theoretically every single thing in the file. And if it finds something wrong with it, it fixes it if it can, and it will tell you I found something. 90% of the time, it doesn't actually tell you. It's like, hey, it just opened. You're like, cool. Did it do anything? I've actually had it fix bugs, because I've had auditors tell me, oh, it looks like you ran an audit on this day and it fixed it. Cool. But it's just like anything else. It just then checks out the elements it fixed, and then you just got to synchronize, and it works just fine. If somebody had that particular element, I honestly don't know what it would do. I would imagine it would tell you, hey, you're screwed.
Yeah, maybe that's when it tells you that there was a problem.
No.
So yes, it seems like there's no real downside to auditing. So although the file that I was talking about, I had a couple people and they would open it, they could get in it fine. But when I went to open it, I ran an audit and it would not let me open it.
Yep.
And it turns out there was something really bad in the file, but they were still like in it and working for 3 or 4 days. I think we did end up having to send that one to Autodesk. So
I've had the issue too, where if those same users remove their cache or their local, then they can't open it, because there's something just in their cache that didn't get corrupt, but there's something on the main cache that got corrupted. So I've had that open too. It's like, yeah, I can't. They're like, I can't open it. Or the inverse of that. I've got clients who can't open it. I get in, I open it just fine. I'm like, yeah, remove your cache, remove your local, depending on if it's on your server or on the cloud, and then try opening it, and it usually works just fine. And if you guys did not know this, I gotta go back to 23. I actually found this the other day. To just open a stupid file here, but in Revit, did you know that under the wipe, you now have BIM 360 collaboration cache?
Saw that the other day.
I did not know he added that. I have a script that does it for me, so it's not a big deal for me. But I have a little BAT file. But yeah, Revit actually had to wipe your BIM 360 collaboration cache out there. So
wipe your cache.
Wipe your cache after you're done playing with your parts.
Oh man.
Ben's we're gonna have to save because it's a little bit longer than we need to, but Augustina's we can answer real quick. She said, is there an add-in that performs well with Keynotes files living on BIM 360? And I think everybody out there who uses Keynotes on a regular basis has the Revolution design tool for Keynote Master.
For their sanity.
Yeah, it's I don't remember what the price is. It's like 200, 100, I don't know. It's not that expensive, but all thing I can say is it's probably my license.
Yeah, it's a couple $100 a year. I don't,
It gives you a Keynote Manager tool. You can edit the keynotes right within Revit here. You can come in here. You can see these are all the ones that are there. You can edit them. You can add subcategories. It even gives you a thing up here to gray out keynotes in the file that aren't being used. I mean, if you do keynotes a lot, and I'm assuming you are because I've had 2 people ask about this, get the freaking Keynote Manager, and they have a cloud-based version of this that does then work with all of the like online BIM 360 type projects as well. And this has been out there since they had the desktop connector, so it's been working well for a long time.
Yeah, well, we started using that at my old firm before they got Desktop Connector, and then Scott was like, well, now we have this. It totally works with Keynotes. No, it doesn't, because there's enough latency that two people can be editing the same Keynote in their file. So his cloud portal does work well and keeps you from overwriting somebody else.
Yeah, and it's also got, this is the one that blew me away that I did not know about when he added it, because it was always this way in the old days. It's called instant save, and for some reason, one of my clients, half of them were manual save, so it was allowing two people to be in the file at the same time, and it kept blowing up. And it was like, oh, so this instant save is you make a change, it saves it, you're done. If it's a manual save, you make a change, you've got to actually do something to say save, and you'll forget. Plus, I always give Steve a great shout out because he lets you rename the Revit tab. So I don't need the big long word called Revolution Design up here, which is a default. Nice. You can rename it to anything you want. So you can rename this Keynote tool or whatever and get it all nice and short, so you don't have, you know, long tabs up here if you've got too many like I do.
Yeah. Oh, yes, the comment now is sometimes wonder when you're already paying for the Autodesk Cloud. Yes, it's true. And I don't know the pricing on the cloud stuff now. I know it had to go up, but originally it was literally like $80 a year because he was just, you know, paying for the hosting itself and passing that on. So yes, it does kind of suck buying all these extra things, but it saves you so much headache that it ends up being kind of worth it.
So hopefully, with the exception of the one question of Ben's, we're 10 minutes over now. So hopefully that answered everybody's questions. Sorry, Ben, that's a little bit longer than a two-minute answer. So we'll save that question, send it to us again for next month, which we'll figure out when it is, but it's not going to be on July 4th. So let us know, and we thank everybody for coming in a week early. We didn't have as many people as we usually do, but we did record it like usual. So you'll get to go back and listen to Melissa playing with her parts.
I was not playing with her parts. You were.
Sorry, that's right. You can listen to Brian playing with his parts. All right. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you on the next session. Ciao.
Bye.